everybody, it's your man Donovan Sharpe, and welcome to this episode of the Sharpe Reality. Be sure to follow me on Twitter at Donovan_Sharpe. Subscribe to my YouTube channel as well. Just do a quick search for Donovan Sharpe or the Sharpe Reality. And be sure to check out my archive at Return of Kings, where I've got over 80 articles published over a 3-year period. Over the years, I've written about everything from females to finances to fitness, and it's a good place to start if you're new to the red pill lifestyle. I had my first live podcast last Saturday with Illimitable Man of IllimitableMen.com, which went very well. We dropped a lot of knowledge. We took calls on air, answered questions that were submitted by listeners during the broadcast. We had a lot of fun. This Saturday, I will have Return of Kings senior writer Quintus Curtius on the Sharpe Reality Live. He's one of the OGs of the manosphere. He's written several books, and he's written for Return of Kings since it started back in 2012. He writes mainly about philosophy and religion and history. He has extensive knowledge in all of those areas, and he manages to weave those concepts into red pill truth in layman's terms, and he's done this for years. So I'm very excited to have him on and pick his brain a little bit. So tune into the Sharpe Reality Live this Saturday at 2 p.m. Eastern. You can go to blogtalkradio.com/the Sharpe Reality, or you can call the call-in number, which is 657-383-1562. Again, that's 657-383-1562 if you want to listen to the show over the phone without using your data. We'll also open up the phone lines and answer your questions. Okay, let's get to it. It's an open secret these days that your average human resources department is just a place that women in the workplace can go complain and get men fired. That's it. That's all it is. Yeah, they screen candidates, and they tell you about your benefits and make you sign a bunch of documents and employment handbooks and all that other stuff. But at the end of the day, all they seem to do all day is look for reasons to fire male employees. Well, today I'm going to tell you guys three true stories of HR treachery. These were stories that I heard from 3 different friends, all at different times in my life, all in different states, and all in different industries, which again proves that HR BS doesn't change with location. So, story number 1. I was living in North Carolina, and this was back when I was in my mid-20s. I was 24 at the time, and I was working at a meat packing facility in North Carolina. And this was actually right around the time I met my future ex-wife. I did a podcast on her as well. It was a good job. It was a blue collar job. I was a forklift driver. I picked orders and, brought them to the dock. I was an order selector, worked in the cold, worked in the freezer and all that other kind of stuff. It was a good job. I was making $13 an hour, which was the most I had ever made at that point in time. Anyway, there was one guy who I became, pretty good friends with. And he and I, we worked the same shift, and we talked a lot. Well, one thing that seemed very odd to me about this job was the fact that the safety manager was a woman. And I remember when I walked in to do my safety training, I think it was the first week I was there, I had to do the safety training. They make you watch videos and take quizzes on heavy equipment, what to do, what not to do, look both ways, don't drive fast, etc. Any man who's driven a forklift who have been through this kind of safety training knows exactly what I'm talking about. Anyway, this particular quote safety manager, she didn't really seem to do much of anything throughout the day. Yeah, she was there. And yeah, she showed us the videos and, administered the quizzes. But all she did was write people up for these minor infractions. Like if you hit a pole or something and she happened to be there to see it, she would take you off of the equipment until you watched all of the safety training videos again. signed some sort of, written warning. And I mean, these were minor infractions. Like if you, like if you bumped into a post, or if you knocked down a pallet or something like, I mean, and I'm not talking about dropping a pallet from like the 6th level up where it could kill somebody. I'm talking about, slightly bumping a pallet and maybe a box falling off. And again, guys, I'm not exaggerating. She would write people up for the stupidest infractions. And even then, this was before I discovered the red pill. I knew that she knew that even though her job was important, I mean, look, she's there to make sure that people don't get hands and fingers and toes and legs and arms lopped off, because heavy equipment is dangerous and you can kill somebody if you're not careful. But the guys that worked there, myself included, we were all highly skilled forklift operators. It's not like we didn't know what we were doing. And so, and listen, again, safety training is necessary, of course, for insurance purposes, liability purposes for the company. But by the same token, it didn't help us to know. And I remember her name was Amber. And we had a joke. Anytime she was out on the floor and walking around looking for people to write up, we used to tell each other there's an Amber alert, which meant that Amber, the safety training manager, was on the floor. So that was kind of a joke that we had, with one another. So anyway, my good friend had just got done, I think, putting away or picking a load or something. And he was on his forklift and he came around the corner and there was someone pushing a cart of bacon or ham. I forget what it was, but it was a cart, and he hit the cart of bacon. And what you're supposed to do is when you come around the corner and you don't see anyone, you're supposed to honk your horn. And so he honked his horn, and the person with the cart didn't stop. It's on video and all that stuff. So anyway, so he knocks over the ham or bacon or whatever it was, flies everywhere. They get down, they clean it up. Amber happened to be right there when it happened. And so immediately she takes my friend off of the forklift. She takes him in to do the safety training. And of course he has to sign all this bullshit document. Well, she ended up making the call. She ended up suspending him for a day pending further review. And so she goes in and he tells me all this stuff. So they suspended him from a day, and the next day they told him that he was fired. Okay. And the reason they told him that he was fired is because, according to the video, he didn't slow all the way down. Like, he was supposed to come to a complete stop before he turned the corner. So I guess he did like a California stop or a rolling stop or a stoptional. But the video didn't have any sound. And so the person who happened to be pushing the cart didn't follow the rules either. She heard the horn but didn't stop, and nobody got hurt. All he did was knock over a cart of bacon, I guess, that she was taken to the processing center. That was it. But again, this is the difference between a man and a woman. This is a man. Again, he got railroaded. He lost his job because he didn't come to a complete stop. Now, if Amber had been a man, if the safety manager were a man, I can all but guarantee that he would say, and it's funny because his supervisor, I remember his supervisor had a conversation with all of us about, hey, XYZ person got fired. You guys really got to watch out for safety because they're on the lookout, et cetera, et cetera. And I remember he said to us in this meeting, hey guys, look, I saw the video and it didn't look that bad to me. And if it were up to me, he would still be working here. That right there tells you guys that the reason my friend lost his job is because the bullshit safety manager was a fucking woman. And women, it's so funny because when it comes to their own sexuality, all of a sudden everything becomes subjective, and they start to hamster and rationalize everything in terms of what's good and what's bad in their eyes. But when it comes to safety, they have to absolutely be black and white. And because this particular person didn't follow every one of the rules to the letter of the law, he lost his job. Okay? So she recommended him for termination. And of course, because the human resources lady was a woman, she said, well, yeah, he's got to go. He didn't follow the rules and he's got to go. So So HR was only involved in the firing process. And my guess is that the human resources troll probably didn't even look at the video. She probably didn't read anything. She took the safety manager at her word and said, well, listen, obviously the safety manager is qualified to do this. And if she's going to make the call that XYZ employee should be fired, then that person needs to be fired. So the point of that story is that because the safety manager at that meatpacking facility was a woman, that's why he lost his job. And people can sit here and say, well, you can't necessarily say that if the safety manager was a man, he wouldn't have done. Yes, the fuck I can. Okay? Yes, the hell I can. Men understand, especially when it comes to things like this. You're talking about a man's livelihood. You're talking about, a man being able to make a living. But because a woman, all of a sudden, when she wants to be subjective and open-minded and operate in gray area in every single part of her life, all of a sudden now wants to punish someone to the letter of the law, when of course human resources doesn't even come close to operating in that way, now they want to fire guys. Well, because he didn't follow to the letter of the law. But if a woman comes to HR and says, hey, he sexually harassed me, and what he did isn't within the confines of sexual harassment as they define it, they'll say, well, this could have led to X, Y, or Z, so yes, it's sexual harassment. Now they want to start to get into the gray area. Things like this, it's like a moving goalpost. And women and again, the human resources department, they'll move the goalpost, okay? They'll move the target in terms of what they feel like is a fireable offense, depending upon whether or not the employee in question is a man or a woman. And I think we can all agree that better than 9 times out of 10, women get the benefit of the doubt in all of these situations. So unfortunately for my friend at this meatpacking facility, he felt the long arm of human resources and, some bitch, the bitch of a quote safety manager ended up railroading him out of a job. So that's the first story. The second story happened when I had just moved to Florida. I had just gotten married, and we decided to move to Florida, and I got a telemarketing job at night because, of course, my ex-wife didn't work, which was my fault. Again, I was a pussy of a man. She told me she didn't want to work, and I let her sit at home on her ass and get fat. That's for another day and time. Anyway, so I get a job at this telemarketing place. It was for a major wireless phone company, and it was the typical case. It was a typical job in that we had to undergo a 90-day evaluation period. So they would train us. We'd get on the phones. They'd see what we can sell. And at the end of 90 days, they evaluate you. Hey, we'd like to bring you on as a permanent employee and not work it was attempt to hire. So yes, we'd like to bring you on as an employee, give you the benefits, higher pay, etc. Or, hey, look, you're not going to cut it here and we're just going to let you go. Well, there was this one dude that worked there, and we were both in the same training class, and we didn't become friends or anything. But we on cigarette breaks we go out and talk. Hey, where you from? Why'd you move down here? Because in Florida, everyone is from somewhere. If anyone who's ever been to Florida, you very rarely meet native Floridians who live in the state of Florida. And so I told him, yeah, I'm from North Carolina. I think he moved from Michigan or Minnesota. I don't remember. It was a while back. Anyway, at the end of the 90-day period, they all started making their job offers. They made a job offer to me. I accepted it. They made a job offer to, a bunch of other people. I think about 50% of the class made it because it was a grueling job. Like it was a boiler room in there. And so when it came to this guy, they offered him a job. And by then, we were texting back and forth. Hey, can I get a ride to work? And, we decided to have sort of a carpool arrangement. Again, we didn't become buddy-buddy because we didn't hang out outside of work like me and my buddy at the meatpacking facility did in North Carolina. But, we were two dudes, we were around the same age. We, both seemed to have the same, temperament. So we naturally gravitated toward one another. So anyway, I remember shooting him a text, hey, got my job offer, they're going to start me at XYZ per hour plus commission. I don't remember exactly what it was, and I didn't hear back from him. Well, the next day, he gives me a call, and he says, dude, they rescinded my job offer, and I said, why? He said, well, remember when they asked us to fill out the criminal background check? And I said, yeah. He said, well, they ran my criminal background check, and he said my license was suspended for 6 months back when I was living in Michigan. And and I guess that's a misdemeanor. I mean, I don't know. My license has never been suspended, but he said to me that they rescinded his job offer because they felt like he hid that from them. And I remember he told me I was on the phone with human resources, and I remember him distinctly saying to me, he said to me at the end of the phone call, I asked the human resources lady, okay, wait a minute, just to make sure I'm understanding you correctly. You are rescinding my job offer because I forgot to tell you that my license was suspended. And she says, yes, that is why we are rescinding your job offer. This is what she told him. Again, and so he ended up not getting the job there. I'm sure he went on to work somewhere else. But again, now here's the thing. There was one girl who was there, very, very good salesperson, but she wasn't shy about talking about her criminal history. She talked about, as a matter of, it was funny, like one afternoon at lunch, we'd all gone out for lunch, and she was saying, yeah, I got busted selling ecstasy, like she called it Skittles, because I guess there's different colors of ecstasy that you can buy. And I guess, different colors taste the rainbow. I guess that's what she called them, Skittles. But she was, oh yeah, I served time in jail and all this other kind of stuff. I remember she was worried that she wouldn't get the job offer because that was a felony, and she had been in drug court and all this other kind of stuff. She told them about it. I guess they reconciled it and said, okay, well, look, that was years ago. It's on your record, but you're a good salesperson. You were honest with us, so we'll give you the job. So she ended up getting the job. But the guy that I was carpooling with, they ended up rescinding his job offer because he failed to put the fact that his license had been suspended for 6 months in Michigan. Never mind the fact that he thought to himself, okay, they're asking about criminal history. And anybody who, if your job says, hey, have you been convicted of any misdemeanors or felonies in the last 7 years or 10 years or whatever they ask you, nobody ever thinks for 1 second, yeah, I got a parking ticket back in 2008, or yeah, I got caught speeding back in 2011. Nobody thinks about that. But again, he was railroaded by human. So again, I want to make this clear to you guys. You have two people, man and a woman. One guy forgets to put that his license was suspended in the state of Michigan for 6 months. He forgets to put that on his application, and one would think, why in the world would he try to hide that? I mean, he doesn't have anything to gain from hiding that. He simply forgot about it, and so they rescinded his job offer. Then you've got the woman who has a felony drug conviction, but of course, because she put it on her application, she ended up getting the job. And if I'm not mistaken, she was still, I think she probably still works there. I don't know. This was years ago. But the fact of the matter is that once again, a woman was treated favorably in the eyes of human resources than a man. You had two people, one had a felony, one didn't. They offered the one with a felony a job and rescinded the job offer to a guy who simply forgot to put that his license was suspended for a few months in the state that he had previously lived in. Now, the last story I'll tell you guys happened to a buddy of mine down in Las Vegas. And once again, this is actually right when I moved to Las Vegas. I moved to Las Vegas from Atlanta. And the reason I moved to Atlanta is, of course, because I'd gone through a big time heartbreak with Amy. You guys can check out that podcast, episode 4, the worst heartbreak of my life. Long story short, the girl cheated on me. I ended up losing my car, my job, and everything. Stayed with a couple of her drug addict friends, got kicked out by their landlord, moved to Atlanta for 6 months, and then ended up in Vegas. So I get to Vegas, and again, I get another telemarketing job, because again, listen, I needed to make money, and, I'm good on the phone, I'm a good salesperson, and, I needed to make some quick money so that I could sort of get on my feet and get my life going again. That seemed to be my go-to move. Anyway, a good friend of mine who I had known when I lived in North Carolina had now lived in Vegas, and we both we both got this telemarketing job. So this one was a little bit more laid back, not quite as many people. It was actually in a really nice office. We all had our own cubicles and everything. It wasn't like the telemarketing farm where you have one room with like 200, call center sales agents on the line. Like, it was probably maybe 20, 25 of us that worked there. Anyway, there was an older lady who worked there. I think she was like 43, 44, something like that. And she was the typical older lady slut, right? Like, she pretended that she was a good girl, and, and she'd tell us all this. She'd talk all this shit about her ex-husband and this and that and the other. She was a white girl. She was basically white trailer trash. Had 7 kids, I think, by like 3 or 4 different dudes. I mean, this chick was a real piece of work. So anyway, my buddy and I, we started there at the same time. We started making money and everything. One day, okay, he was called in by one of the supervisors, and he was like, "Oh, what's this about?" And the supervisor said, "Look, I'm sorry, but we got to let you go." And he's like, "Why?" He says, "Well, because of the things that you've sent via email to, we'll call her Leanna, the older lady that I told you about. Basically, she was the secretary." And what he had sent Leanna, and here's the thing, they had been sending emails back and forth, and they weren't flirting or anything. They would send, people would send each other emails, funny pictures, this and that or the other. But he had sent her like links to certain websites that were red pill. So I think he had sent her a couple of articles from Chateau Artiste. I know that there were several red pill websites. I know he sent her a couple of articles from the Rational Mail, sent her a couple of funny memes. He sent her a picture of a dude wearing a shirt that said "No hymen, no diamond," and so they fired him because of that. Because this chick, this secretary chick, said that it offended her. And he says that he remembers the human resources lady coming in and saying, "I just couldn't believe the things that I saw on these websites." So once again, my friend was fired by human resources. Now, listen, again, I'm not gonna sit here and say that this wasn't his fault. He should have known better than to send shit through email. And listen, he's fine now. He drives a cab. I think he drives a cab, and I think he also drives for Uber now. But so listen, he definitely takes his share of the blame for him losing his job. He should have been more responsible. He should have known better. But the fact of the matter is that had he sent this, and this chick was sending him stuff from like Jezebel, and they would have fun back and forth because I guess she was a staunch feminist. But she decided to pull the trigger. You know what? I don't like this guy anymore. Boom. No hymen, no diamond. And of course, the human resources lady, she reads all the Jezebel shit and doesn't fire the secretary, but she fired my friend because of the red pill truth that was right in her face. So he was fired because of an opinion. And when you're fired because of an opinion by human resources, who 99% of the time is run by a woman, that's the way it's going to go. So the moral of all 3 of these stories is that human resource, and I'm not telling you guys anything you don't already know. I'm sure we can all tell each other. I'm sure that we all have stories of human resources, unfairness, treachery, etc., etc. But again, you absolutely have to be careful with what you do or say in the workplace. I am very fortunate in that what I do for a living doesn't have a human resources department. So I can say what the fuck I want and be exactly how the fuck I want to be. But for men who work in an industry, whether it's blue collar or if it's in an office job, and listen, you'll have a little bit more leeway if you work in a warehouse because you can talk shit about women out of earshot of the human resources department or other women. Yes, there are female forklift drivers these days, but most of the time they're men, and it's just a little bit looser. That being said, if your safety manager is a woman, you still have to be on the lookout. So again, all three of these people who lost their jobs because of human resources, yes, they had a little something to do. They're not completely absolved of all responsibility. My buddy in North Carolina, he should have been a little bit more careful on the lift. He didn't do anything egregious or anything like that, but when it comes down to it, okay, yeah, he probably should have come to a complete stop before turning that corner and knocking over that cart of ham or bacon or whatever it was. That being said, yes, he should have been careful, but his lack of attentiveness at that time doesn't rise to the level of termination. My friend in Florida, who lost his job, of course, because he didn't put a fucking traffic ticket or the 6-month suspension on his application. He should not have had his job rescinded by that. But of course, because human resources is run by women, they give women the benefit of the doubt. Because of course, the woman who had a felony conviction for drugs on her record was allowed to work and obtain employment. Of course, my buddy down in Vegas. Listen, I mean, at the end of the day, he should have known better than to exchange emails with somebody, especially that had that kind of content in it. Even still, the woman that he was exchanging emails with was sending him pictures and links to feminist websites. So he got fired because he wasn't a feminist. So at the end of the day, guys, you have to be careful. You have to be responsible. And you have to be on the lookout. If you have a human resources department, you need to understand very clearly that they will never, ever be on your side. If a woman who works in your office or at your workplace goes to human resources and says that you sexually harassed her, chances are you're going to be out the door, and it's not going to require much proof to get you out the door. This is why you have to be careful with who you converse with, what you say, what you're texting. You have to protect yourself. Again, I'm not telling you guys anything you don't already know. I just felt it necessary to share 3 stories that I remembered from back in the day. Human resources has always been anti-male. We're just now, the difference is that we're just now beginning to figure it out, and now we can actually do something about it in the way of protecting ourselves as much as we can from that. That concludes this episode of the Sharpe Reality. Again, follow me on Twitter at Donovan_Sharpe. Be sure to check out my podcast archives on the sharpereality.com. You can find it on my YouTube channel. Just do a quick search for Donovan Sharpe or the Sharpe Reality. I am also available on iTunes. Check out my column at Return of Kings. Again, I've got a little over 80 articles published in the 3 years that I was there. Check out redpillsports.com. That is my bi-weekly sports podcast. We also release material, during that time. We'll release little snippets of our episodes just to give you guys sort of a preview as to what's coming up. Thanks for listening to the Sharpe Reality, and we'll talk to you next time.